Hey, the Craig Fahle Show on Deadline Detroit is made possible by Samaritas, which is the state's largest private foster care and adoption agency. But they do a heck of a lot more than that. They've been serving homeless families, persons with disabilities, abused and trafficked women. They're also one of the largest resettlement agencies in the state. They provide market rate and affordable housing for seniors and HUD housing for families. And they also have skilled nursing, memory care, and rehab communities in Grand Rapids, Cadillac, and Saginaw. Samaritas, thanks for their support. Great organization, doing great stuff all around the state.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the week that was on Deadline Detroit. I'm your host, Craig Fahle. Thank you very much for being with me today. And we are going to break down some interesting news this week. Once again, my guest this week, as always, we have Alan Lengel, who is editor and co-founder of Deadline Detroit. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Nancy Derringer, contributor to Deadline Detroit, is with us as well. Thank you. And, of course, our special guest today is Coleman Young II. Coleman, thank you for being here. Really do appreciate it. Oh, something's going on with Coleman. We'll get him straightened out. He needs better bandwidth or something like that. But he'll come back in just a second. Yeah, there he is. There he is. He's back.
My internet connect's kind of messing up there.
Got to pay the cable bill, Coleman.
That's right.
Important.
If you can, in this day and age. All right. So obviously the big story this week is still the nation's response to not COVID-19, but Obamagate. I want to start with Obamagate today. Just because.
Obamagate.
Talk about the shiny object du jour, Obamagate, the unmasking scandal, which I'm still trying to figure out where the scandal part of this is. I have read a couple of things about this, and the best explanation I could find was in the Independent. Now, follow me along here, and I apologize for sort of monopolizing the time at the beginning. It says the theory maintains that a corrupt cabal of never-Trump top U.S. intelligence officials, such as James Comey and Peter Strzok, colluded with the international intelligence community, Ukraine, the DNC, and others to create a pretext to investigate the 2016 Trump campaign's ties to Russia by entrapment of former campaign advisor George Papadopoulos in a sting operation by providing fake dirt purportedly from Russia on Hillary Clinton. The FBI later obtained multiple FISA warrants to wiretap former campaign advisor Carter Page in the belief he had ties to Russia. The theory also maintains that Mr. Comey, the allegedly corrupt FBI director who was supposedly a leader of the conspiracy against Mr. Trump, wrote a letter to Congress just weeks before the 2016 election announcing the Bureau's continued probe into Mrs. Clinton's email server as a false flag to throw people off the scent of his real intentions to harm Mr. Trump.
Wow.
Now, if you believe that,
wow.
I mean, that's the great thing. But
where do
my
you
favorite
start?
part was Donald Trump was asked about this. And it was in a press conference just a couple of days ago. A reporter from the Washington Post said, what crime did Mr. Obama commit here? Obamagate. Right. And here's what the president said. He goes, Obamagate, it's been going on for a long time. It's been going on from before I even got elected. It's a disgrace that it happened. And he said more information will become public over the coming weeks. And when asked about what the crime is, he says, you know what the crime is. The crime is very obvious to everybody. All you have to do is read the newspapers except yours.
If I have to tell you, it's like when you're fighting with your spouse when you're 17 years old, if you're married at 17, and you say, and you're giving them the cold shoulder and they say, what's wrong, honey? And then you say, if I have to tell you, then we have an even bigger problem. So yeah, that's basically that's.
I would say of all the garbage in there, I'd say the one legitimate thing. I think the FISA thing with Carter Page and whatever. I mean, an FBI lawyer had admitted to falsifying some documents there, but other than that, in the totality of it. There were plenty of red flags. I think the biggest thing is if the FBI and Justice Department had not investigated, they would have been remiss. I mean, allegations were coming forward. I mean, you could imagine they said, no, hey, it's Donald Trump, whatever, let's just leave it alone. I mean, anybody in that circumstance would have been investigated, I think. And the interesting thing is, and I had a good source on this, that Comey was not the one. It was actually McCabe who was the one really driving force behind getting the Russia thing going. Comey was like, hey, there was a meeting supposedly at headquarters, probably multiple meetings, but at least one that I know of, where a lot of the top FBI people sat around the table, and not everybody was in agreement with the investigation. But McCabe was one of the people who was really pushing for it. And other than that, I mean, Comey had some missteps along the way, including sending the letter to Congress right before the election. But if anything, I mean, Trump got a lot of breaks certainly during the election.
I mean, this notion that somehow that letter about Clinton and the investigation into the email servers is somehow a false flag to throw people off the scent that they were really investigating Donald Trump is just ridiculous on its face.
Yeah.
It just, again, the suspension of disbelief that is required to believe in this theory is something that's a bridge too far for me. I'm not willing to go there, but Fox News has definitely taken this on as their cause du jour. And I'm not surprised. I mean,
Tucker
Fox News,
Carlson.
Oh,
I was watching him last night. I was like, I just shook my head. Finally, at some point, you just change the station. You're like, I give up.
Well, but it does trouble me that there are a whole lot of people, including some good friends of mine and relatives of mine, that are watching this stuff and eating it up, like a bowl of really good ice cream and just enjoying every bite and wanting more of it. And I guess, Coleman, that's how scandals sort of get life, is that people get excited about wanting so desperately to believe that somehow President Obama is the leader of this cabal. Is just, I don't know, maybe it's just a consequence of being president while black. I'm not sure.
PWB. I like that. President and while black. Okay, good.
Coleman, your thoughts?
This is a slow pitch off the middle to you, Coleman. So take that.
Well, no, I thank you. I appreciate that. Listen, I just personally think that in a global pandemic where you have over 30 million people who have applied for unemployment, where African Americans are 3 times more likely to contract the coronavirus and 5 times more likely to die from it, I just don't think this is the time to be engaging in political theater or to be distracted by conspiracy theories that just aren't true and there's no there there. And I think that most Americans are really suffering right now, and we need a president that's going to be able to put forth a plan that we all can get behind, who's working every day to find a vaccine for this virus, who should be talking about testing, rapid testing and tracing and personal protection equipment, getting the gloves and getting the masks and getting the gowns. I mean, if you look at the way some of these hospitals look like, they're overwhelmed. We were talking about stacking bodies on top of each other. I heard at one point in time, I'm sure it's going down now, but at one point in time, they were talking about actually getting trucks to put the bodies in because they would run out of space to store them in the morgue. And this is serious right now.
Well,
people are dying right now.
The worst of it has.
Parents. This is not the time to be engaging in this type of conspiracy theory nonsense, in my opinion.
Well, but see, it's the perfect time for Trump, though, because everything else that we have to talk about makes him look really, really bad. And he's doing that all on his own, Nancy. I mean,
it's almost like he came up with a name, Obamagate. It's like this. It's like some meeting, where somebody comes up with the Wonder Bra, make it happen, And so that's what they've done here. So, I mean, when I hear Coleman talk, it's like, that you sound like a man who has like all your marbles and knows what's important and how to set priorities. But this is not the country that we live in anymore. So
yeah, it is kind of amazing with everything that's going on that this guy can find time to be so petty and deceitful at the same time. But he's been so deceitful. I mean, it's interesting watching Dr. Bright. I love that name. Dr. Bright yesterday really just exposing and expressing everything that a lot of skeptical Americans have been, watching with no cohesiveness at the top. I mean, a guy who won't even wear a mask, a guy who's like, his people are setting policy and he's ignoring it and sabotaging it and basically telling all these people with guns and stuff like, ignore the science, just go back. We got to go back to business. And it reminds me of the Nixon tapes, where you suspected Nixon and his sort of country club, little racist, anti-Semites were just that. But then you hear these tapes, and I remember one tape with him and Haldeman, and he said, he was talking about spies, and Nixon says, notice all the spies are Jewish, the Rosenbergs, the Ellsbergs. He goes, those people are so sneaky. And then Nixon says, well, you notice there's no Negroes, spies. And Haldeman says, yeah, they're not smart enough. And you hear that conversation, and it's kind of like, oh my gosh. And so it's the same thing here, where you suspect everything you're saying, like they're incompetent, they have no cohesive plan, and you're thinking, well, maybe they do, but maybe I just don't see it. And here's a guy in the inside confirming all your worst suspicions.
Right.
Well, the testing thing, Coleman, you brought up is important because, there is no cohesive plan on how we're going to do testing. The president even went out of his way yesterday to say that testing is overrated, and that because when you test people, the numbers look worse. He actually said this yesterday, and that, we cannot have a reopening strategy that does not include testing, contact tracing, all the different things we've been talking about. Yet they want to just make us think that, hey, just get back to your normal life. We'll work through this. And the one unsaid thing about that is that they are willing to sacrifice human lives for the sake of the economy.
Right.
And somehow that if you're not willing to do this, then you're not tough. The fact that masks are becoming a red-blue issue is just ridiculous to me.
Yeah.
It's absurd.
It is ridiculous.
We're politicizing death here. I mean, that's really what this is. We're just politicizing. Look, I lost two of my closest friends in the legislature, in Isaac Robinson and Morris Hood. Isaac Robinson was pure joy and just a sweetheart to be around. And
we're Coleman's
Morris Hood just taught me so much about the business, and I said to him,
I remember.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me?
Can
you hear me?
Yep, we've got you, but you're fading in and out a little bit. So we're gonna make sure you've got a better internet signal next time. So
okay.
Yesterday I was watching Michael's our Michael Lucido, who's engineering the show and is kind of the Deadline Detroit photographer, videographer. And he was doing a walkthrough. He went to Lansing yesterday for the demonstration. He was doing a walkthrough, and I could hear him talking. And for a while he stood, and he didn't say anything, so I could hear the speaker. And the speaker was, and I don't know who was speaking, but they were giving the Admiralty flag argument. You remember that? I mean, I actually, this is actually the joke
explain
on King of the Hill.
Explain it to our audience so they understand
this is the idea. This is it's kind of a deep, crazy conspiracy theory that if there's, and you've probably seen this, I mean, I think I first saw this in church, but it's also in courtrooms, where an American flag will have a gold fringe on it and maybe some tassels hanging down, right? Okay. Well, they claim that gold fringe makes that an Admiralty flag, that it suspends U.S. law, that it becomes the flag of an admiralty, which is a maritime construct of some sort, and that you don't have to follow any ruling made in a courtroom with a gold fringe flag in it. I mean, it was the kind of thing that a third grader would just laugh out loud at. But this guy is up there talking about this, and people are listening more or less respectfully. And I'm like, these are the people that are hauling their butts to Lansing every few days to walk around with their big guns and everything.
I have to say they had their big guns, but apparently the weapon to use against such crazy people is water, because most of them didn't have umbrellas, and that kept the crowds down yesterday.
That's right.
We did not have anywhere near as many people showing up in Lansing for this protest as we did a few weeks ago. And a fight erupted there, which I was actually pleased to see. A scuffle, but some guy shows up with a Barbie doll and a noose and tries to claim that doesn't represent Gretchen Whitmer. Yeah. But the other people in the crowd were like, hey, this is the kind of stuff that makes them make fun of us, makes us look bad. Right. And at least they were trying to police their own crowd, Alan. I mean, it seemed like they were trying to say, look, we can't be seen as too crazy, or else we'll be exposed for being crazy.
I think, and I wasn't there, Michael was there, and I don't know what the whole game plan is, but usually, having been on strike for 19 months at the Detroit News and being one of the strike leaders, where when we had big gatherings and stuff, the police would usually make contact with people who were sort of organizing and stuff like that, and saying, why don't you police and take care of your people so we don't have to get in on that. And it seems like that they had it better organized than they had in the past, and so it seemed to work out better. And their message was clearer than this craziness that they've had the past two times, and particularly the last time where there were guns and posters with swastikas and
Right.
it's
They were in the they didn't. I don't think they went into the building this time. The last
Right.
time they were
Well, they tried to charge the
upstairs.
floor.
Yeah, they were. Well,
Yeah.
they tried to charge the floor, and then they were up on the in the gallery with their giant guns, and
Right.
well, we talked about this last week. I mean, it was that's insane. But
Some reporter got hit with the butt of a gun, if I remember correctly as
yeah,
well.
although I don't think it was one of these, like deliberate. I think it was
Yeah,
one
it
of
wasn't
those
intentional.
close.
But
Yeah, it was close quarters, and something got swung around. And
I just remember when I was in Lansing and I used to serve, and guys would come in there with guns, and there was one guy that came in, and he kind of had like the old school Civil War rifle type of deal.
yeah,
And but I just remember just being a little bit uneasy about it. You know what I
Right.
mean? Just
Well, of course.
seeing that happen. And there's no metal detectors in the Capitol.
it's
You
a
can bring
felony.
a gun, but you can't bring a sign. I mean, that's
Right.
just
It's a
crazy.
felony to bring a weapon, a firearm, into any courthouse in the state.
Right.
But but you can bring it into the legislature.
There's
And this mealy mouth excuse making from these gun nuts. Well, I wasn't brandishing. I was just carrying. It's like that is such, excuse me, bullshit. And the failure of the Capitol Commission or the legislature to do anything about this, I think, is disgraceful.
I did a story about, it must have been 3-4 years ago for ABC News, and it was basically how many airports allowed people to carry weapons outside of the secure areas, and some were open carry. And in one instance, there was a guy down in Atlanta where open carry is okay. He dropped off his daughter at the airport. He had AR-15 or whatever, and he was walking around, and people were freaking out and calling the police. And the police approach him, and he's like, "I know my rights, and and you better not harass me, or I'm going to sue." And stuff. Well, meanwhile, he freaked out the whole airport. I mean, who's not going to be freaked out when you see someone with an assault rifle walking through, and they don't have a uniform on?
Often, that is how mass shootings start, is by
Right.
somebody like bringing an assault rifle to.
It's
sort of
hard
the
to get shot when you
prerequisite.
don't have a gun.
Yeah.
That's something.
When you have state senators who are literally wearing, and listen, I'm for everyone's right to protest. I think that's an American right, First Amendment right. We should protect it. But when you're talking about doing things that are potentially putting other people's lives at risk, when you have senators that are wearing bulletproof vests because they feel scared here. I mean, this is a significant problem. When you have people who were outside, who were, one person was dancing with a black face on. I mean, listen, I support people's right to protest. I understand people are upset, but that's just stuff we just can't have right now for whatever cause you're trying to do. There's a line to everything, and I thought that crossed it.
Well, hold on a second, because if we're talking about putting people's lives in danger, how about the Wisconsin Supreme Court? The Wisconsin Supreme Court overturned the governor's order to, stay in place order. And basically, it's a free-for-all over there. A bunch of bars opened up that night. The Tavern Association in Wisconsin said, hey, you're open for business. There were people out there partying, no masks, no social distancing. I think it's just a matter of time before we see a spike in cases in places like Waukesha, Wisconsin, where this was taking place, in Platteville and places like that. But Wisconsin, we like to think of them as sort of, kind of like Michigan, but man,
They're not.
Politics there are something
once,
toxic right now.
Wisconsin, Minnesota, to a lesser extent, Michigan was once like the laboratory of prairie progressivism, and that simply isn't true anymore. It was Minnesota. I think it's still intact, but I think I read a phrase today, maybe in the New York Times, that Wisconsin has been the proving ground for a lot of super hard right policy at the state level, and that's what we're seeing now. They have the court they deserve.
Well, see, I blame Garrison Keillor. Prairie Home Companion kept people sane in that state for a long time, and now that it's no longer there, it's just not working right.
He's Minnesota, though.
I know, but I'm just saying, it wasn't just Minnesota. That was sort of like the upper Midwest in general.
Yeah. No, you're right.
And again, common sense wisdom seem to keep people in line, but apparently that's out the window.
Don't tell that to our Uper fans, though. Our brothers and sisters for the UP, man. I mean, they are all Green Bay. When I was in Lansing, they all were Green Bay Packers fans and everything. So,
Well,
If you're west of the bridge, you're more likely to be a Packers fan. If you're east, still
That's true.
you still live and die with the Lions.
well, the Youpers, one of their biggest
Nancy
hits was a
Derringer is
song
right
called
again.
"We Go
That's true.
Green Bay," which was
I'm sorry,
talking
what?
about the Youpers, this great band from the Upper Peninsula, the
Oh,
Youpers.
them.
One of their biggest hits was "We Go Green Bay," which was a song about how basically everybody packs up to go to Target in Green Bay
Yeah,
because it's the closest one.
that's funny.
So yeah, Wisconsin's kind of an interesting scenario that they've got going on. So and I just want to apologize to people real quick. If the live feed keeps going out. I keep having to restart it for some reason, and so don't mind me if I fade out for a second. I'm just trying to get this sorted out. Not exactly sure why it keeps cutting out, but it does. So there will
Bad
be.
rain last night.
Well, I'm not sure what it is.
Sunspots.
Something is going on with Zoom and Facebook right now. I think they're having some sort of a disagreement. So they're limiting this to like 3 minutes at a time before I have to keep restarting it. Anyway, that's my technology rant for the day.
All right. I have something I can bring up.
Please, Alan, go ahead.
When I thought it was really interesting, WDIV did an interview with the mayor, and we, aggregated some of that. It was actually a live interview, and the mayor Mayor Duggan was pretty open about just saying, hey, restaurants. He says, I think we're only going to see about a third of a third filled of the restaurants and casinos. And he says, I don't see full occupancy. And he says, until we get a vaccine, which could be another year. And I thought that was kind of a sobering statement, because everyone has such wishful thinking. And, Trump is trying to, convey that we'll have something ready by September. And people are thinking, oh, by the end of the year, we'll be back to celebrating. Everything will be back the same. And I think it was kind of a sobering statement. I was kind of, surprised how candid.
I feel sometimes like I spend all my time complaining, and because I do. But I want to say one thing. I think if you had to single out, individual politicians who have really stepped up to this challenge, I got to give a lot of credit to Mike Duggan. I mean, I think jumping on, partnering with Gilbert and jumping in on early testing, getting the drive-through site up and running smoothly within days. I mean, that is a small miracle. Yeah. I mean, given that this is something that we've never done before, right. There's a lot that I really have to give him credit.
Right. I concur, and I feel that as any mayor in Detroit feels the weight on their shoulder of really also representing sort of the underprivileged. I mean, there's so much poverty here, and people need a strong advocate to get a lot of the basics here. And I feel like he's really sort of stepped up, particularly now that he's stepped up to the plate.
Well, let's stay in Detroit. Go ahead, Coleman.
Oh, no. I was just going to say, I agree. I mean, listen, I think that he's done the best with what he has right now. I mean, especially this unprecedented situation. Now, from what I was told, emergency management usually goes, the locals handle it, and then what the locals can't handle, the federal government steps in. But you have a federal government that's deferring, really, and practicing devolution, trying to shift it off to the states that do not have the infrastructure really to be able to deal with this. So you have these mayors that, for somewhat are kind of on their own island, so to speak, with this unprecedented virus, unprecedented global outbreak, global pandemic, excuse me. So he's doing the best he can with what he has. I mean, you have to be impressed with a lot of things that are going on out here. I mean, obviously, it's just heart-wrenching to see the numbers on the screen every day and see my friends and family members pass away like this. Just like in New York with our Latino community, just like, across the country, it's just tough to see. But he's doing the best he can. I mean, it's really like they're starting like little war generals out there, so to speak, in these larger metropolitan areas. And he's doing the best he can. And it shows that he deserves all the credit. Kudos to him.
And it's interesting, the Washington Post did a poll of all these governors and how they compared in popularity and how they're handling the pandemic. And, Whitmer was up there at 72%. Actually, the highest was Mike DeWine, the governor of Ohio, who had about 84%. But I think the governors have really been the saviors. They've really been the heroes here because
They've had to be.
Well,
the federal government has dropped the ball.
They've been left on their own. I mean, that's what's so terrifying, upsetting, and ultimately just infuriating about this.
But here's what
if there is anything that calls for a strong federal response, it should be a global pandemic, and it's been crap.
Right. Here's the thing about Ohio, though, and explain this to me, right? You know, we have these protests happening here in Lansing. Ohio's had almost the same restrictions as Michigan. Mike DeWine, of course, getting good remarks from the public. And yes, there are people protesting in Ohio as well about this, but their anger is not at the governor there. He's a Republican. It's at the public health director. She's the one that's getting all the grief for this in Ohio. So they have directed their rage towards her as opposed to Mike DeWine, who's doing the exact same thing that Whitmer is doing. So it's so obscenely political.
See if we can find something that the health director in Ohio and the governor of Michigan have in common. What could it be? What could it be? Oh, well, I don't know. So it'll come to me sometime. But
hey, I want to talk about something else that's not COVID related for just a second. But this is a lawsuit that we obviously have some interest here in the city of Detroit, a settlement in the lawsuit in regards to this right to literacy in the city of Detroit. Now, granted, it says that, you know, you can't guarantee that somebody's going to be literate. You can't, you know, there's no legal guarantee you can make because you have to take advantage of what's put there. But it certainly seems as if it's an acknowledgement of the resource disparity that's existed for a long time between suburban schools and the city of Detroit. And Coleman, I want to get your take on this because this seems to me to be an important step forward for the DPSCD.
It is. I mean, I'm very glad that Governor Whitmer. At first, is the case is Gary B. v. Snyder, and then Snyder's no longer the governor, so now it's Whitmer. I think it's the right thing for Governor Whitmer to do. I think it's one of the most important decisions that she will make to settle this case. This is something that's been a problem for a long time in DPS, and I think that this has been a problem. I mean, you could go back to. God, I'm trying to think of the case. It'll come to me, but this has been a problem for a very long time. And I think that the fact that you have to even bring this case in the first place really just kind of shows how far and how much investment DPS needs right now. I think that we still have a lot of great things going on in Detroit Public Schools, but I think it's not just investment. I also think it's reform academically at the state level. That's something that I was trying to push when I was a state legislature to no avail, unfortunately. But I also think right now that, you know, especially before COVID-19, I think that Nikolai Vitti kind of has his hands tied right now. You're talking about $500 million that he's going to have to pay off in terms of just for build. I'm not talking about like for, for extraordinary infrastructure. I'm talking about just so buildings don't leak, just so you have rats out of the building, just so you have like air that comes on, you know, have hot air that comes on during the wintertime. You know what I mean? I mean, your cold air during the summer. These are things that we're going to need that DPS just fundamentally lacks right now. We have over 46,000 students somewhere between there and falling. I think it's one of the first times where there are more, and I'm not knocking charter schools. There's a lot of great charter schools, but the first time we have more school children in charter schools for Detroit than in the public school system right now. And so I think there's just a lot of investment that Lansing's going to have to make, and I think a lot of that comes from the 1999 takeover, quite frankly. But literacy for the African-American community has been something that we have been talking about since separate but equal. And I think this case, for her to settle this, I think does a lot for me. I think it does a lot for this is a historically just amazing victory for a lot of people in the educational rights movement.
I would agree with you. Can I bring up one thing, though? She promised them $100 million for the city of Detroit, roughly, give or take. There's so much that's peeled off for the individual defendants, but then there's something, the gist of it is something like $95 million dedicated to literacy programs in the city of Detroit. Is the legislature going to give her that? Does she have the power to just peel off $100 million out of a radically shrunken, state budget? Exactly. And then also the other thing is, what makes the city of Detroit so different from the city of Flint, from the city of Benton Harbor, from all of the other impoverished, low-income communities in Michigan where students are struggling just as much.
But I think it's a legal acknowledgement, though, about the importance of equity in funding, not necessarily equality, but equity in funding. And I think that's an important message that we're pushing right now, that this isn't about necessarily making sure everybody has the same. This is about making sure that everybody has the resources they need to succeed. And this is something that we have not been willing to focus on in the legislature. I covered the legislature back in the 90s when a lot of these fights were going on. Coleman, you were, of course, there in Lansing for a long time. This notion of Proposal A and what it did, yeah, okay, it raised the bottom, but the bottom is still not enough. And you know, we've all seen that little graphic of the people trying to watch the baseball game where they show the difference between equality and equity, you know, where the shortest kid gets 2 boxes to stand on so he can see over the fence.
I think it's equity and adequacy, but that's okay.
Well,
it doesn't matter.
Adequacy, you could argue that every school district suggests that the funding is inadequate right now.
Right. But I mean, you're right, though. But it's the whole idea that it costs one amount to educate a middle-class child from a house, you know, where they had preschool and everything. That costs one figure, and it costs a different amount to educate a child from a chaotic low-income home, or who is learning English as a second language, or who has had exposure to environmental toxins like lead, like we have in Flint. I mean, there's all kinds of, you know, it's separate, it's equal is not adequate to everybody. So.
All right. Well, hey, we're running out of time, everybody. So we definitely need to get to Schmuck of the Week. I've got a nominee that I like. Who wants to go first this time? Should I go first, or should Nancy? Nancy's raising her hand.
I'm going to go. I've had so many choices this week, and I thought of giving like an amorphous Schmuck of the Week to like a collection of people. But eventually I'm going to come down to the very punchable face of Rand Paul, the ophthalmologist. Is he an ophthalmologist? Is that him? Yeah. Saying something, using literal playground language against Dr. Fauci, calling him like, "You're not all that, man," or "You're not the be all and end all." So, you know.
Fauci was awesome. I thought his response.
He was great.
It was so classy.
Exactly.
Loved it.
So Rand Paul's mine. Go ahead.
All right.
Rand Paul. Okay, so we have a vote for Rand Paul. Okay, I can see that.
I have.
Alan, go ahead.
And I was trying to look this up, and I think it was Congressman Hudson from South Carolina during the hearing yesterday with Dr. Bright, who instead of concentrating on policy and concentrating on the content of what he was saying, started trying to suggest, oh, so you took time off after you basically got fired from your job. And Dr. Bright says, well, I took a little sick leave because I was under a lot of stress and I had hypertension. And he just kept hammering on that with no substance at all. And it really just got me so angry. And the other, I have a alternative Schmuck of the Week is collectively some of the people in my apartment building who I've gone to, like yesterday, I went up to a woman who had no mask on. She had her dog, and I said, excuse me, she was standing in front of the elevator. I said, could I ask you a favor? And she said, sure. And I said, could I ask you to wear a mask when you're in the common areas here? And she goes, and I'm like, what? What did I ask?
At least you didn't get beat up like some other people. At least you didn't get beat up or shot like other people have for this. I mean, you know.
Yeah, it's so like
hearts go out to them.
I'm trying to understand the mindset of like, why are you so like, first of all, shocked that someone asked you to wear a mask, and then second of all, why would you be so indignant? And you know, and I did it the other day when I heard a guy asking the security guard for his J. Crew box, which really just kind of set me off. And I said, hey, same thing. I said, hey, can I ask you to wear a mask? And he looks at me, and I said, all these people all day are giving out Amazon boxes to everybody, and people are coming down without masks and breathing on them. I said, don't you care about that? So I don't know, but I read that Howard Stern's wife will not walk with him anymore because when he walks down the street, he yells at people, "Where's your mask?"
All right, Coleman, do you have a Schmuck of the Week?
I do. I think I'm gonna have to nominate myself for Schmuck of the Week.
Wow, this is a first.
And the reason why is because I personally thought that a woman of color was going to be nominated for the vice presidency. And I just don't think that's going to happen. I mean, I'm not disrespecting Elizabeth Warren. I think she's brilliant. I think she's a talented, really smart candidate. I just thought that either it was going to be
Stacey Abrams.
Cortez Masto, who is a senator from Nevada, who's Latina, or I thought it was going to be Stacey Abrams, and it just doesn't right now. I could be wrong, but right now it just doesn't look.
I was just going to say, what kind of advanced intel do you have, Coleman? Because I think this is still a wide open race.
Last night,
it just doesn't look like it. Like I'm looking at polls that they're showing, and it just to me it just looks like it's kind of going towards Warren's way. People are not, from what I'm hearing, people are not taking Abrams seriously, and I haven't heard a lot from Castro.
She was on last
I heard
night.
Al Demings is going to be one pick, but I haven't seen anything yet. So
Stacey Abrams was on MSNBC. I think it was last night with Joe Biden.
Yeah,
I
hope I'm wrong.
Very impressive.
All right.
She
well,
is.
I've got one more for Schmuck of the Week. This is my nominee, and the man's name is Dave Stewart. Now, Dave Stewart, you probably don't know who he is, but he's a very important man because he is the head of the neighborhood association in his gated community in Ashford Hills, Oklahoma City, which is some neighborhood there, gated community. So what he did was decided that he was going to block a delivery driver from leaving the neighborhood because, of course, the driver of the truck, wearing a uniform with a name tag on it and everything, was black. And he demanded to know where this guy was going. And the driver said, "I'm leaving. I just made a delivery." And he said, "Well, who'd you deliver to?" And he's like, "None of your business." So the guy blocked in the car, wouldn't let him leave. Then he gets his buddy, who's his apparently, deputy or something, deputy neighborhood association guy, to come in there and block him. They hold this guy up for an hour. And finally, they get in touch with the guy who got a delivery and said, "Who is this guy?" He said he just delivered a new refrigerator and he was leaving. And so they finally called the police on this guy. And he's waiting for the police. He calls them back after they finally let him go, and they realized they were just being complete asses. And they let the guy know, and they're like, "How'd you get in here?" He's like, "I had a gate code to make a delivery. The guy let me in." And again, just another example that we've seen time and time again recently of people overstepping their authority and thinking they're policing the neighborhood and doing it based on racial crap. I'm tired of this stuff. Dave Stewart is my schmuck of the week.
Good for him.
The only other guy that was close was Joseph Kowalczyk from Macomb County, who sent the bomb threat to the FBI just because he said he wanted to mess with them. That was in Clinton
I bet they're
going
to mess with him. I bet the FBI is going to mess with that guy.
It's entirely
so much
possible.
Competition for a schmuck.
I know.
I just wanted to say,
Coleman, you don't win that. I'm sorry, you're out of the running for schmuck of the week.
If we were schmucks of the week,
you're not even close.
you got to broaden your thinking a little bit.
You got to take your game up much higher.
All right. Well, it finally looks as if summer is approaching. We've got some warm weather out there right now.
Nice.
Say it's sunny this weekend. I assume we're all going outside at some point. Is that what the big plan is for the weekend? Just to go outside?
Mm-hmm.
Outside.
My backyard,
Outdoors. Yep.
In the backyard.
I'm going for a bike
Take
ride.
my walk.
I ain't going nowhere beyond that. Not without a mask and gloves.
There you go. All right. Well, we're going to have to wrap it up. I want to thank, again, our sponsors for this program, Samaritas, for their consistent help. By the way, a really good interview that I did with Kelly Dobner of Samaritas is available at DeadlineDetroit.com. I mean, they are doing some really, really good work with some very vulnerable populations right now. Seniors, kids in foster care, basically political refugees, new immigrants, people who have sort of been left behind throughout this whole thing. So support your local nonprofits who are doing this kind of work. They still need your help right now. And I know everybody's struggling with their own stuff, but don't forget there are people out there that need help more than we do at this point in time. And if we can give anything or give some sort of assistance, that's great. Alan, you've got a cool thing that Deadline's doing today.
Yes, we are actually feeding engine house number 17 in Midtown over on 2nd Avenue. The staff has chipped in, and we are going to feed lunch. I may take a walk over there, just do a long distance wave to say hello.
I hope they'll share a slice with you.
Yeah, right.
Take some
Yeah,
pictures.
there were 4 good pizzas, one including a Philly cheese pizza. So, and another the Popeye pizza.
Take some pictures. The Popeye
Yes.
is my favorite. From
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
No idea
Popeye's
what that
great.
is, but it's got to have spinach on it, I'm assuming.
It
Yeah,
does. It has
yes,
spinach.
but
It's very
a good
good.
one.
Okay,
So-
well, very good. And olive oil.
That's
So
from
there you go.
Mootz's Pizza. They do a great job.
Yes,
Oh
they
yeah, I remember that over there.
Also,
Eastern
just a
Market.
little thing which I was excited about and I wrote about, maybe my enthusiasm showed, but American Coney Island opened today, and Avalon Bakery, which I always get their multi-grain bread. They are opening on Tuesday.
Well, there
So
you
good.
go.
It's great
Two
to
good
slowly
choices.
see some of our favorite places come back online.
Well,
Yes.
phasing
Even a
back to normal
limited-
at some point in time, although it's, like I said, before we do this on a large scale, testing,
The
people,
normal
we need it.
is
Overrated.
Yeah, normal. What is normal? Normal is
Normal.
over.
I think what we have to sort of accept is that we've lost our life that we knew, and we're rebuilding with what we have and see how expansive we can get it. But the life we had, I think, at least for now, is gone.
Well,
Yeah.
we
So
shall
quickly.
see.
I wish we had valued it more.
All right,
Right.
Alan,
All right.
thank you. Nancy, we
snacks.
appreciate you. Coleman, thanks. Appreciate it very
Thank
much.
you.
And by the way,
Always a
check out
pleasure.
30 Black with Coleman Young on DeadlineDetroit.com.
Absolutely.
He's got a podcast up there, and we're looking forward to some new material there soon as well. And
All
I had
right.
fun putting
Yep.
those together for you. So
Yeah, I had a little bit of a break. I'm going for a job, and I got some other things that I'm doing with my foundation. Got a little bit busy, but I'll be back. I'll be back. Come back strong.
all right,
All right.
very good. Looking forward to it.
Okay.
All right. Have a
Look
great
forward.
weekend, everybody. And thanks for checking it out. If you like it, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. We do this every Friday at 11:30, the week that was on Deadline Detroit. I'm Craig. Have a good weekend, all. And Alan?
Stay home safely.
Love you guys. Be safe.
Okay.
right.
Bye-bye.
Okay, everybody, have a good weekend.
My name's ML Elric. I'm an investigative reporter and a connoisseur of fine yogurts. I know a little bit about Detroit. I know a little bit about deadlines, and I'm asking you to become a member of DeadlineDetroit.com. Like me, I'm not asking you to do anything I wouldn't do. I'm making a monthly donation. My wife is making a monthly donation. I know that seems redundant, but they need the money, and the money goes to a good place. Getting the story out, getting the truth out. Because if we don't support local journalism, there's some people a couple blocks away from here who are going to get away with a whole bunch of stuff that's going to cost you a whole lot more than just a few bucks out of your pocket every month. Go to DeadlineDetroit.com, become a member. You'll see it's really easy at the top of the website. Give early, give often, give generously. Just give a damn. That's the best way I know how.